children are in poverty. And we rank 34th behind Latvia and before Romania in industrialized countries in terms of these poverty rates. The nemesis of your ancestors in Ireland justified not saving the Irish from the famine because dependence on charity would be not an agreeable mode of life. First of all, do you agree that child poverty is an indicator of a society's health?
Correct.
And second, what would you say to me as a child born in poverty to assure me that you would not use Trevelyan's justifications for not saving the Irish?
Okay, I didn't catch that last part.
Trevelyan justified not saving the Irish in the famine because dependence on charity is not an agreeable way of life.
And you're asking me to say whether I agree with that or not?
It's hypothetical that if I'm born...
Yeah, no, I got that, but I don't understand what you're asking me about.
What would you do to assure me that you would not do similar?
You actually think I believe that? Really? You actually believe that?
I believe that there's a
amazing.
vilification of the poor.
That's really something.
Well, you did say that.
You know, well, look,
That
you know,
children are being fed, but they're empty souls. So, I mean,
so here's the point I keep trying to make. It's really kind of amazing how, you know, we're not going to have a good adult debate on these issues if we keep impugning people's motives and if we keep calling people names and throwing baseless charges at one another. It's my turn now.
No,
I'm getting at your question right now. I'm actually very proud of the work that I've been doing on poverty in the past year and earlier in my life. And what I sought to do a year ago was, knowing that the 50th anniversary of the war on poverty was coming up, and knowing that those results are just like you said, the highest poverty rate in a generation, 46 million people in poverty, child poverty, as you said, deep poverty, the highest on record. We should ask ourselves, is what we're doing working? And we should say, no, it's not. And so what I basically decided, what I set out to do a year ago is say, well, let's find an accounting of all these things we do at the federal government to fight poverty and get a handle on what's working and what's not working. No real accounting occurred, by the way, so we did it ourselves. So we, in the budget committees, decided to go out and find out what all does the federal government do, how much are we spending, and what are the outcomes? What literature is out there that has, analyzed these programs? Audits and Inspector General reports and GAO reports, and then get a good accounting on what it is we're doing to measure the status quo. Because you can't get you're right there? You can't reform these programs if you don't even know what they're doing. And so my argument is, if we take a look at the status quo, there are a couple takeaways. Number one, we have been measuring our poverty-fighting efforts based on inputs, based on how much money we spend on programs, not based on outcomes. How many people are we getting out of poverty? Number two, we need to have a different approach that goes at severing the root cause of poverty. Go address the root cause of poverty, and don't just treat the symptoms of poverty and try to make poverty more sustainable. Because the goal here, like you just said, is to break the cycle of poverty. And so we need to rethink our approach. And as we rethink our approach, there are two things that are in dire need of reform. One, and there's been so much written about this, I think we have inadvertently reinforced this idea in America that all you got to do, if you're not in poverty, is pay your taxes and government will take care of this problem. We have actually displaced charity. We have actually isolated people in poverty from the rest of society. This is what Bowling Alone, Bob Putnam's book, is basically all about, which is we have reinforced this notion that this is government's responsibility, you don't have to do anything about it. Those of us of our faith say, using solidarity and subsidiarity. It is each and every person's obligation to get involved in their community to make a difference, to fight poverty, eye to eye, soul to soul, person to person. This is the point I've been making all year. So that's why I'm kind of offended at your inference. Now, this is what we have to look at, which is every person's place in poverty is not necessarily the same. I met with a young woman in her mid-20s in Racine the other day who was abandoned by her parents when she was 15 years old. Went homeless. She had a lot of problems, more than just a check. She needed more than just money. She needed a lot of help, and she needed somebody to help her. So, for instance, Catholic Charities, which is really effective at this, attached someone to her to help her put together a life plan for herself. Not for a day or a week, but years. To help her get the counseling she needed, to help her get housing, and to help her put together a plan for her life that she is now in the midst of implementing and executing, going to school, extremely excited and happy about life, now engaged to be married, and getting out of poverty. This is how you fight poverty. Person at a time, you customize it. You don't say, it's not my responsibility, government has a program for it. You get involved yourself, and you do it independently. I was at Pulaski High School twice this last year. A high school in downtown Milwaukee that 2 years ago had 14 gangs in this high school. 14 gangs giving violence, creating havoc, and dropping graduation rates like you've never believed. A new idea called the violence-free zones, organically created locally, taking people who are ex-gang members, people who went through these high schools, went through poverty, went through violence, learned that it was the wrong way to go, have now become mentors to these kids in this school who are helping each and every one of them get on the right path of life. They have the credibility to say, don't make the mistake I made. Here's a better path. Go to school, take it seriously, and I realize you have all these problems at home, let me help you through them. These are just examples. These are examples right here in Wisconsin of people successfully fighting poverty person to person through charities. The point I'm trying to make is we have to drop this idea that government is the only needed thing here. Government has a huge and important role to play in fighting poverty, but not the only role. Civil society, charities, people have got to step up to make a difference here so that we can get people in poverty on an on-ramp, on a bridge to a better life, and so that we can break the cycle so that kids are not growing up into multi-generational poverty, which has been plaguing this country. The last point I'll make is this. The government inadvertently has created all these barriers to work. I was just going through these CBO documents that say, just because of Obamacare, 2.5 million less, the equivalent of 2.5 million less jobs will be done by the end of the decade because of the disincentives to work because of this healthcare program. Employers are cutting the work week from 40 hours down to 29 hours because the work week is now 30-hour full-time, not 40 hours. So there's one law where the government said, cut people down from 40 hours to 29 hours. That didn't help you get out of poverty. This law is saying, if you go to work, you'll lose more. People are getting like a tax rate of about 80% just to try to dig out of poverty and what they lose by going to work. And so we're putting all these roadblocks in front of people, making it harder for them to transition into lives of work. And that is something that we need to deal with at government while we assess the government's approach to the war on poverty. Work is the bridge to a better life. And so that's job training, that's smoothing out these benefits, and making sure that work always pays to work. And so my argument is, we need to look at this problem, bring new ideas, stop calling names with each other, stop impugning people's motives, stop impugning people's character, and if we can all acknowledge that what we're doing right now isn't working, then why don't we open our minds to maybe some new approaches and some new ideas and see if we can fix this problem together in this country.